The number of families classed as homeless in London has gone up by over a third in just a year. And in some boroughs, the rise has been even more, with Hounslow, Waltham Forest and Newham recording much bigger increases. Well, we'll speak to the Housing Minister in just a moment. But first, this report from our special correspondent, Kurt Barling.
These latest homeless figures paint a picture of Londoners taking a much bigger hit than the rest of the country. Many local authorities are finding more people needing their housing support where homes are expensive or scarce. Sandra went to court to stay in her privately rented flat. Only when she and her son were evicted did the council accept a responsibility to intervene.
I was not a bad tenant because I was paying my rent every month, taking care of the place, and I was even the chair of the resident association. But you know, if the landlord can get more money for it, and if he wants to get more money because he can, well, he will. But if I think is that fair, I don't think it's fair for the family that live in the place.
These unintentionally homeless families say homeless charities display a worrying trend.
These families represent the tip of the iceberg. They're families who have lost their homes, usually through no fault of their own. They weren't able to keep up with the rent because something happened to them, like a loss of a job. The likelihood is these families will wait in temporary accommodation for a large length of time.
The 20% increase across the capital in homeless acceptances masks a diverse picture. In 7 London boroughs, there's actually been a decrease in places like Hackney, whereas in the 25 other London boroughs, there's been an increase. There's been a significant rise in Waltham Forest, over 200%, in Hounslow, 250%. One local authority told me today that by reprioritising those in most need, they've been able to reverse their upward trend, although it's still unclear if this is sustainable.
The government is in complete denial. Last year, for 2,000 households, families in London, they faced heartbreak. That's the reality of failing housing and economic policies. There
is a fear that many low-income families are simply being priced out of the rental market. Kurt Barling, BBC London News.
Well, I'm joined now by the Housing Minister, Grant Shapps. Thanks for talking to us this evening. First of all, 36% increase year on year in homelessness overall in London. Why is that?
Well, there are obviously lots of pressures with the economic situation going on for so long as it has. And I think it's worth saying straight away that anyone who's homeless, I mean, even one case is too many. And I think the sign of a civilised society is not to have homelessness. It's worth knowing, though, that these figures today are actually homelessness acceptances. This means that they've had a council, their local council, say, yes, we accept we have a responsibility, you will therefore get a house. So this is not what people might think of as homelessness or rough sleeping. This is actually people being helped, and a measure of how many people are being helped right now.
But they still can't stay in their own properties, and that's the fundamental point, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. But again, the picture's really much more mixed than you might at first think. For example, this week, today, these figures show there's some rise in these acceptances of homelessness. But just last week, we saw that the number of repossessions is actually down in the last year. So fewer people being repossessed because the mortgage rates have stayed low. I think the most important thing is to make sure that we're doing everything possible to keep the figures as low as possible and help people out as much as possible. That means we put money into it. And it's worth knowing that the rate of homelessness still remains lower than in 28 of the last 30 years.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
So we are working very hard to keep it like that.
Sorry to interrupt there, but Sandra, in that report we just saw, she's having to leave her property. She can't keep up with the rent. We're told that the housing benefit cap that you're introducing means more people will be in that situation. We're going to see an increase in these figures, aren't we?
Well, I think you may be mixing two different stories there. From what I understood of Sandra's story, it wasn't a sort of housing benefit cap position, though perhaps you'll let me have some further details. She'll now get the support from her local authority. And I think most people watching this would agree that the new cap, which is, by the way, £21,000 a year in housing benefits, still paid by other taxpayers going out to work, is probably generous enough. Yes, there are pressures, but there are also things we're doing to make things easier. For example, changes that are just coming in but won't be in these figures will make it easier for councils to help give new homes to people who are homeless. So
okay.
There are things that we're doing to try to assist.
I'm afraid we have to leave it there. Grant Shapps, thanks very much indeed.
Sure.
Still to come tonight.